Hi, my name's Pete Krause, and this is the second video in the How to Play series for Oath Chronicles of Empire and Exile. If you missed the first video, I put a link to that down in the description, and I'll put a card on the screen, and if you click it, it'll take you over to that video. When you're done with that one, come back over here, because in this video we talk about the details of being a citizen player. We look at writing the Chronicle, and that's what you do after you're done playing a game. I'll show you how to set up for your next game, and then finally I point out the 5 mistakes that I made, so hopefully it helps you when you play with your game group, and you avoid making those same mistakes. So without further ado, let's jump in. There's no test you have to pass in order to become a citizen in Oath. You just need to be offered citizenship by the player who has the relic called the Grand Scepter. At the start of any game, the Grand Scepter starts in the hands of the Chancellor. But since this is a relic, it can be targeted and taken during a campaign or taken in some other really sneaky ways. Ooh. So the player with the Grand Scepter can offer citizenship to any exile player, including themselves. And when citizenship is accepted, there's one thing that always happens. The new citizen gets one relic from the Imperial Reliquary. Now, just so you know, that may not be all that is exchanged in a citizenship offer. To get an offer to happen, and maybe to get a citizen to accept, sometimes takes a bit of negotiation. So during negotiation, players may agree to exchange favor, secrets, banners, and non-reliquary relics to help persuade. The exile can even be allowed to peek at the relics in the Imperial Reliquary. So whether or not additional negotiation was required, if the exile player accepted the offer of citizenship, then they go through the following steps. First, like we said, they receive a relic from the Imperial Reliquary, then exchange anything else that was agreed upon. The exile flips their board over to the citizen side, and they exchange the warbands from their board and from sites they control on the map with purple Imperial warbands. Now, if the exile had revealed a vision, this would get discarded. If they have the Oathkeeper title, they still keep it. However, if it's on the usurper side, they would flip it back to the Oathkeeper side. If they were in the act phase, this phase ends, and then they refresh their supply to the leftmost space. Also, don't forget the Chancellor receives the power revealed under the relic on the reliquary. So now that we know the details behind how an exile becomes a citizen, let's look at what changes for the citizen player. First, since the new citizen is part of the Empire and considered an Imperial player, they now rule all sites with purple warbands. Also, the way the Oathkeeper title works changes a bit when there's an Empire as well. For an Empire, the Oathkeeper title always stays in the hand of the Chancellor when the Oathkeeper of Supremacy goal is used for the game and the Empire rules most sites. In these cases, the citizens still get to use the extra defense die the title provides if they are declared the defender in a campaign. Now, if the goal is anything other than the Oathkeeper of Supremacy goal, the title stays in the hands of the citizen or Chancellor who meets the requirements of that goal. But even if a citizen holds the title, it's treated as if the Chancellor holds the title for the ends of rounds 5, 6, 7, and then 8. So as a citizen player, the muster action, the campaign action, and a couple of your minor actions work a little bit differently because now you're teamed up with the other Imperial players. For the muster action, the change is pretty simple. Instead of gaining warbands matching the color of your player, as you can guess, you gain purple Imperial warbands instead. For the campaign action, if you or another Imperial player is declared the defender by an attacking player, the other Imperial players may have an opportunity to band together and defend as allies. So if the defender is a citizen, the Chancellor will always get to join as an ally. But for other citizens to ally with another citizen or the Chancellor, their pawn has to either be at the defender's site or at a targeted site, and they must have the defender's permission to join in. The advantage allies may bring to the defender is that they add the warbands on their board to the defense total if their pawn is at a targeted site or at the site with the attacker's pawn. And they have the option to include the benefits of any battle plans that they control. Now, if the citizen loses the battle, the Chancellor gets to decide which warbands are killed. And any warbands moved off of sites that aren't killed move to the Chancellor's board. So for this campaign example, the black exile is going to attack and declares the yellow citizen here as the defender. The only target that the black exile is going to choose is the shrouded wood right here. So like I said before, the Chancellor always joins in as an ally. However, the Chancellor's pawn is not at the shrouded wood, so the only thing the Chancellor could do is use its battle plans and not add the warbands that are on its board. And then this orangish red citizen over here can't join the battle because it's neither at a targeted site nor is it at the site with the attacker's pawn. So the yellow citizen gets to add one blue die for the target here, but does not get to add another blue die for the Oathkeeper title since we're not playing with the Oathkeeper of Supremacy goal. And the black exile collects 4 dice for the warbands on its player board right here. And the black exile spends 1 favor to activate Mercenaries, which gives it a +3 attack dice. The yellow citizen activates Bear Traps right here, which subtracts 1 attack die and kills 1 warband on the black exile's board. Since the Chancellor's an ally, it adds its battle plan called Fire Talkers, and this requires the Chancellor to spend 1 secret, which it flips over on its player board, and it can then add or subtract 3 attack dice, which they're going to subtract 3 attack dice from the black exile. But this one requires the Chancellor to hold the Banner of the Darkest Secret, which they do. The yellow citizen rolls its die and adds its warbands from its board and the 2 warbands from the site. They got nothing on their roll, but they add 4 warbands for a defense total of 4. The black exile rolls its dice for attack total of 2. Remember, the hollow swords are half an attack. And then to win the battle, the black exile is going to kill off these 3 warbands on its board for an attack total of 5. So the black exile wins the battle. And then at the site here, Shrouded Wood, one of these warbands is killed. The other one gets returned to the Chancellor's board, not the Yellow Exile's board. And then one of the warbands from the Citizen's player board is killed as well. And you'll notice the Black Exile here had no warbands to put on the Shrouded Wood from its board since it killed them all off. But that's okay, that's legal. It just makes the Shrouded Wood easy for the taking for the next player. So those are the differences if you or another Imperial player are defending. Now, if you take the campaign action as an Imperial player, you can play nice and just attack exiles. Or you can be a bit more of a backstabber and attack citizens or the Chancellor. But if you attack another citizen or the Chancellor, or if the Chancellor's attacking you for the campaign action, everything else is the same except you're not considered an Imperial player even though you use the purple warbands from the board for the attack. That means you can't ally with another citizen while you're attacking them. So now we move on to minor action differences as a citizen. If we look at the minor action where you move your warbands around, unlike an exile player, in order for you to move warbands from your site to the board, you need the Chancellor's permission. But no permissions needed if you move warbands from your board to your site. There's also a bonus minor action that you can take as an Imperial player. If you're at the same site with another Imperial player's pawn, as long as the other player agrees to it, you may give them any number of warbands from your board or take any number of warbands from their board. And lastly, let's look at what a citizen does differently in the rest phase. So during the rest phase, instead of refreshing your supply like an exile does, back to the number of how many warbands you have sitting next to your board, a citizen refreshes their supply to match the Chancellor's supply. So if the Chancellor had their supply in this 10-4 space, then I refresh my supply to that space as well. So now that we know how citizenship works, let's look at how you can lose it. One way this can happen is that the player with a Grand Scepter can exile a citizen by paying them 5 favor, plus or minus a couple, like we'll just see in a second. When you're exiled, you kind of do what you did to become a citizen, but in reverse. You flip your board back to the exile side, you replace your purple warbands on your board with warbands of your color, and you refresh your supply to the leftmost space. And that's pretty much it. Now back to the favor that is paid to the exiled citizen. The player with the Grand Scepter pays 5 favor to the player getting exiled, but they get paid +1 favor if they hold the Oathkeeper title, and +1 more if they hold the Banner of the People's Favor. On the flip side, if the player with the Grand Scepter is the Oathkeeper, subtract 1 favor, or if they hold the Banner of the People's Favor, subtract another. So for example, let's say the Chancellor holds the Grand Scepter and wants to exile the Yellow Citizen player. To do this, the Chancellor would pay 5 favor to the Yellow Citizen. However, since the Chancellor holds the Oathkeeper title, they get to subtract 1 and pay 4. But since the Yellow Citizen holds the Banner of the People's Favor, the Chancellor has to add 1 more favor to the payment, bringing it back up to 5. And so the Chancellor would pay 5 favor to the Citizen, and the Citizen's now exiled. Another way you can lose citizenship is you can exile yourself. Like if you're sick of being on the same side as the other Imperial players. To do this, you pay favor equal to the number of secrets on your board, secrets on your cards, and you pay favor equal to the number of warbands on your board to the player who holds the Grand Scepter. After that, becoming an exile is similar to what we just saw, except exiling yourself ends your act phase. By the way, if you hold the Grand Scepter, you can't exile yourself. Alright, so now that we know just about everything about how a citizen works, let's go ahead and get the archive set up, and that way we're ready to write the Chronicle after the first game is over. The archive packet consists of these 3 decks of cards and these 8 cardboard separators. Just place the separators in this compartment in the box for now. Next, open all 3 packs of the cards, and then separate out these new cards we haven't yet talked about called edifices, or is it edify? You can tell the difference from edifice cards because they have 2 sides, intact and ruined. Then take the rest of the cards and separate those by suit. Now to create the archive, start by sorting the edifice cards into the correct suit, and then shuffle each pile of denizen cards and put them into the archive, again matching the suit. The dividers that say World Deck and Dispossessed won't have cards in them until after your first game, when you'll write the Chronicle, which we're going to look at next. So let's say that the game is over and Jessica, the Yellow Exile player, just won. She would now do what's called writing the Chronicle. And writing the Chronicle means that at the end of the game, the winner, Jessica in this case, gets to put the game away in a certain order so it's easy to set up the next time you play. We'll go through writing the Chronicle step by step next, but just as a reminder from the first video, for the next game, since Jessica won, she'll become the next Chancellor. And if there was a Chancellor from the previous game who was defeated, they and their citizens will become exiles for the next game. Alright, so writing the Chronicle has several steps that get a bit tricky to remember even if you've played a few times. So I recommend the winner follow the Chronicle summary quick reference that you're going to find hopefully somewhere in your box. The first step of writing the Chronicle is to vow an oath. And if you're wondering, this is how the Oathkeeper goal changes from one game to the next. If Jessica won the game as an exile by fulfilling a vision, which she did, then she chooses the Oathkeeper goal that matches or has the same symbol on it as the fulfilled vision. If Jessica won in any other way, then she gets to select one of any of the remaining goals except for the one used in the last game. After the goal is selected, it goes in this world box. The next step for Jessica is she gets to offer citizenship to exiles so they could join forces with her for the next game. As a side note, it's actually just the different colored boards in the game that will flip at this point if players accept the offer of citizenship. But the actual human players get the option to start the next game as a different color if they want to. But I suppose you could house rule that you continue to play as the same character, but that's up to you and your gaming group. So to offer citizenship, first all players flip their boards to the exile side, and this applies even to the unused boards in the box if they're on their citizen side. Jessica then has the opportunity to offer citizenship to any exile players except for the boards that just flipped. This offer is just to become a citizen and doesn't include any of the other perks offered that we saw happen during the game. If the player accepts the offer, they flip their board to the citizen side and replace any warbands on sites they rule with Jessica's warbands. So next, if Jessica won as either a Chancellor or citizen player, she would get to either build or repair one edifice at a site she rules. Edifice cards don't appear until after your first game. And if you're wondering, that's why we haven't talked about them yet. Each site can only hold one edifice, no matter if it's on its intact side or its ruined side. To build an edifice, you discard a denizen card at the site you rule, and then replace it with an edifice from the archive matching the same suit as the discarded denizen. Let's say on a later game, if an edifice is on its ruined side at a site you rule and you want to repair it, you just flip it from its ruined side back to its intact side. Jessica then discards sites except for sites she rules and sites that have intact edifices. For the sites that get discarded, they go back to the site deck. Any denizen cards at these sites get discarded to any discard pile, relic cards from these sites get returned to the relic deck, and any ruined edifice cards go back to the archive. Next, all pawns, warbands, favor, and secrets from the table go back to the box. And if Jessica in this case did not rule the site with an intact edifice card, they would get flipped to the ruined side. Sites without edifice ruins get pushed toward the topmost empty slots in the cradle region in a direction following this pattern. Sites with edifice ruins get pushed toward the bottommost space in the hinterland region following this opposite pattern. Fill empty site locations with face-down sites from the shuffled site deck. If there are no sites that are face-up in a region, then flip the top site for that region so it faces up. Jessica then gets to modify the world deck a bit and add 6 cards from the archive to it. 3 cards that get added to it are based off of the most plentiful suit of the cards in Jessica's advisors. Next, if we look at the Chronicle summary quick reference, she'll add 2 cards from the next suit clockwise of this one. And then finally, she'll add 1 card from the next suit clockwise of this one. So since Jessica has just 1 advisor from the Beast suit, she'll add 3 cards from the Beast suit, 2 cards from the Nomad suit, and 1 card from the Discord suit. As a side note, if Jessica's advisor suits had a tie like this, she could just pick 1 suit from the 3 to start with. Combine all discard piles and losers' advisors into a stack. Then remove and set aside all vision cards. Shuffle this and then remove 6 cards at random and put these in the dispossessed area in the archive. Shuffle the relic deck and losers' relics and replenish any face-up sites that have fewer relics than they need. Then shuffle together the winner's relics, and Jessica doesn't have any relics in this case, and the relics from the Imperial Reliquary and put these on top of the relic deck. Stack cards still at sites on the site, and then stack these up so the first cradle site is on top and the bottom hinterland site is on the bottom, and then put these into the world box. Put all remaining denizen cards on the table in with the denizen pile you made earlier, and include Jessica's advisors. Shuffle these up and split the denizen cards into a pile of 10, a pile of 15, and then a pile of whatever remains. Add 2 vision cards to the pile of 10. 3 vision cards to the pile of 15, and then shuffle each of these piles. And then stack the piles as shown. If you need a reminder of how to create this deck for future games, there's a reminder on the board. Once you're done, you put the world deck in the world deck section of the archive. So now when you set up for future games, you really have just about everything ready to go in this world box, and then with your world deck. You set up your sites along with the denizen and relic cards from your world box, and then place the goal reference near the board. Next, I'm going to point out just a couple more differences that you need to be aware of for your future game setup. So the winner of the previous game gets to be the Chancellor for the next game. This is recommended, but it doesn't have to be in the case your game group wants to do something different. But we'll just say Jessica will be the Chancellor for our next game. Now the other players, in turn order, choose which Exile or Citizen board from its chronicled side they want to play. For the Chancellor, aside from the 3 warbands they place on their player board, they also place 2 warbands on the topmost face-up site in the cradle region, and then 1 on each other face-up site that has at least 1 denizen or intact edifice card. The Chancellor begins the game with the Oathkeeper title, but if the Oathkeeper goal is the Devotion goal or the People goal, the Chancellor would also place the corresponding banner next to their player board. Then the Chancellor draws the top 4 relic cards and places them on each of the 4 spaces in the Imperial Reliquary. If a player starts as a citizen, rather than taking 3 warbands of their color and putting them on their player board, they take 3 purple warbands instead. Take 3 cards from the bottom of the world deck and place 1 in each of the 3 discard piles. Next, each player in turn order draws 3 cards from the bottom of the world deck and just hangs on to these for now. If any visions were drawn from any of these cards, advance the visions drawn marker accordingly. The Chancellor places their pawn on the top side of the cradle, and then in turn order, each other player places their pawn on a face-up site. Then they choose one of the 3 cards they drew as a face-down advisor, and discard the other 2 following the normal search discard rules. And with that, you're ready to start your next game. So if you decide to add more players to your next game and play with, let's say, 5 or 6, it's not a problem. You just have to put 4 favor in each of the favor banks instead of 3. So at the beginning of this video, I said I'd share the top 5 mistakes that I made to hopefully help you avoid making those same ones. So here goes. So the top mistake that I made was thinking that trading favor for secrets worked the same as trading secrets for favor. When you trade favor for secrets, obviously you've got to put 2 favor on there to get a secret. But I would think every time I traded, I would get 1 secret just from the denizen. However, you only get a secret if you have an advisor or for each advisor matching the same suit as this denizen. Since the Yellow Exile doesn't have any advisors matching the Nomad suit, Yellow Exile might as well not take this action because they won't get any secrets. Thematically, I suppose this makes sense because the denizen's not going to tell you a secret unless they trust you, and they're not going to trust you unless you have advisors from their same guild or suit, which I don't, so they're not going to tell me a secret. So the second mistake that I made in my first couple of games and still make from time to time is that I forget that you have to stop drawing cards during a search action if you're drawing from the world deck and you draw a vision. Sometimes I've drawn 3 and then I remember it later, and by then it's too late and I just kind of let it ride. So if you draw 2, you draw your second card and it's a vision, stop drawing, move the visions drawn marker, and figure out which card you're going to keep and which one you're going to discard. The third mistake that I make, and I still make from time to time, is I forget to collect the defense die for the Oathkeeper title when I have the title. The fourth mistake that I commonly make, or still make today, is I forget to take the action powers from the denizen cards that I rule and even some of my relics. So if I was the red citizen player here, I could get a bonus when I take the trade action from this acting troop card, or get a bonus to the recovery action if I can pay the cost from the Magician's Code. And then if I take the travel action, I can get a bonus from this relic, the Dragonskin Drum. So the fifth and final mistake that I make from time to time is site powers. So site powers, site powers, site powers. I'll forget to take the benefit from sites that I'm located at, and sometimes I'll forget the penalty from sites I'm at. So just remind yourself and other players, always think about these site powers and use the site power reference card if you're unsure of what they do. So those are the top 5 mistakes that I've made, and if you want to see one of those play out in real world, you can watch my video on the walkthrough where I make one of the mistakes on trading favor for secrets. Otherwise, I hope to hear from you in the comments, so drop me a line, or we'll see you in the next video.